Hey there, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and just talk to you real quick about sourdough starter. There are three that I learned about sourdough through my previous two failures. Got into the science of it and looked some things up, and I want to share those with you, and I think they're really interesting. The first thing is you want to look for bubbles, not just bubbles there, but you want to look for bubbles on the side. It almost wants to look like a sponge or something. You want all kinds of bubbles there. The bubblier it is, the better. And the reason for that is that the yeast is actually eating the wheat in the starter, and after it eats it, yeast farts. That's what those bubbles are. They're yeast farts. Actually, what they are is CO2. And what you do is you put, like a rubber band or something right at the edge of where it was when you started, after you fed it. And then every time it doubles, you feed it again. I use tape. I've started using tape, and then I write the time that I started the starter on there, started feeding the starter. So I have, don't lose track of how long it's been since I fed it. And the reason for that is you want to get it down to where there's maybe about 4 hours or less between feedings before it doubles. The doubling, this extra volume, there's no extra weight. It weighs exactly the same. But the volume has come from those yeast farts. And those yeast farts are what causes it to rise. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with your bread. If you want oven rise, you need a nice farty yeast. That is the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned is I had taken a regular starter that a neighbor gave me, and I had just used that, continuing to use regular flour when I'm using fresh milled flour. And there's something called flour shock. And flour shock means that yeast was not used to eating fresh milled flour. But if you're using fresh milled flour to make your sourdough, you want to make sure you use fresh milled flour to make your starter, because then when you put the starter in the flour or in the dough, it's going to be eating fresh milled flour, and it's already used to eating that. The third thing that I learned has to do with the fermentation process. The bacteria actually lives off the yeast. The yeast lives off the wheat, and then the bacteria lives off the yeast. And the bacteria is what gives it that sour flavor. So if you want to have a good sourdough bread, let it rise in the fridge. The cooler rise gives that bacteria more time to do its magic and make it more sour.